when it comes to pricing, we've got to constantly invest in that. I think what I see is that, there's no end goal there. It's a constant journey of evolution to continually aligning your pricing to what customers value and better understanding what they value.
Coffee's for closers only.
So we've established my proposal is sound in principle. Now we're just haggling over price.
Let's see how much we're going for on eBay.
Man, it's the same as Dunkin' Donuts. Costs 15 times the price.
Welcome to Impact Pricing, the podcast where we discuss pricing, value, and the personalized relationship between them. I'm Mark Stiving. Today our guest is Valerie Howard. Here are 3 things you want to know about Valerie before we start. She spent 3 years in pricing with Continental Airlines, and I say that carefully because she didn't say pricing, but I think all the things she did had to do with pricing. Mm-hmm. She's now been 8 years with Pros and is currently the Director of Solution Strategy there. What an awesome title. And when I asked her what in pricing she's passionate about personalization and digital selling. You know this is going to be a phenomenal podcast. Welcome, Valerie.
Thank you, Mark. It's such a pleasure to be here and speak to you today.
Oh, this is going to be great. So first, how did you get into pricing?
Well, let's see. Goodness, my mother had a wonderful career with Continental Airlines, and then I also loved math. And so, when it came to looking for one of my first roles, outside of school, the role of being a revenue management analyst at Continental was such a thrilling job for a young person there. You got to, watch the demand of consumers, where they wanted to go, and also business people, right? And there was so much data there that the airlines had about, the way people move, and then, thinking about how they valued that movement and trying to move inventory or allocate inventory accordingly to the way consumers behave or the way people generally behave was really, really fascinating. And it's just, fascinating to watch the way people move and what they're willing to pay for when it comes to travel and business.
If somebody would hire me, I would take a 3-month job at an airline just to do that. That would just be so much fun to see all that.
It absolutely is. It's fascinating. You learn things about socio-economic behavior that maybe you hadn't considered in the past. For example, I could share with you that, because of the one-child policy, a lot of kids from China would come to the States to study during the year. And so all the flights that would come back from China after the semester had ended, go back to China from the States after the semester had ended, would be completely full with full fares. And then as they came back from China to the States, it was the same way. So just incredible, perspectives on, why are people willing to pay so much in these situations? And that was one of those interesting scenarios at that time.
Absolutely fascinating. So I'm not sure I should ask this question or not, but did they use Pros software?
They did.
Nice. Yeah. I know the Pros was really big in the airline industry early on. So
yes, absolutely. That's, in my role today, I manage the pricing solution marketing portfolio from a marketing perspective. And so what we're concerned with is helping B2B companies better understand how to manage their pricing across channels, across perhaps their e-commerce, and managing negotiated sales and the pricing that they would recommend to their sales teams as well. Really why I got into this is because I knew how sophisticated the airlines were when it came to pricing, right? And considering how the price should change throughout what they call the booking cycle, right? If you're 330 days out from that flight taking off, there's a certain price point that buyers are willing to pay. And it's actually, in many cases, not the lowest price, right? But and that changes as you move towards a window that's closer to that departure date. So, often close in, there's a lot of business buyers, and so those dynamics are so interesting. And I just see that in every other industry, better understanding the dynamics of why customers are willing to pay a different price because of the unique situation of that buying engagement. In my perspective, every buying engagement is unique.
Yeah. So we're going to dive into that in just a second, but I really want to ask, can you describe easily what Pros does? And I know this is a really hard thing to do.
Absolutely. Well, we do have, definitely several solutions across the breadth of the B2B commerce platform and the travel platform as well. But what we're ultimately trying to help our customers do is to better engage with their customers by better understanding what they value, right? And helping to optimize both the offers and the prices for each of those unique engagements.
So I don't think we've said these words yet to everybody, but this is a software solution. This isn't me coming in and doing consulting.
Very good points. Yes, we're leveraging artificial intelligence, machine learning to help drive those recommendations, right? So a lot of times these recommendations are coming through to customers, even in a self-serve way. So one of the solutions that we offer is a solution called opportunity detection, and it helps to personalize offers for unique buyers. And so if I was coming perhaps to a distributor's website, they would know that Valerie Howard is on the site, and based on her last purchases, she may be interested in buying this. But hey, buyers like her also buy, maybe, I guess, let's see, they buy hand soap and hand sanitizer. So maybe she would like to buy hand sanitizer today also, type of thing. So those types of recommendations are really helpful, to get them straight to the customer, and it eases that whole buying process, and it ends up actually really expanding what customers are willing to pay, or expanding the full wallet share that customers are buying with their suppliers.
Yeah. So what I just heard you say is that we have a special solution to help companies do better cross-selling. So a customer comes to buy one thing, we know what else they want. Let's see if we can sell them something else.
That, as well as if they for some reason, if their demand has been declining over the last period of purchasing, we'll be able to say, well, hey, what's going on with this business? We can identify that, and maybe support a sales rep in proactively having a discussion. Is that buyer perhaps reaching out to competitive suppliers? Are they getting a better deal? And so it really supports them in having that conversation. And we're, able to support that insight across both the sales angle as well as maybe the customer self-serve perspective.
Yep. Okay. So let me not minimize it all. Right. Pros is one of the first pricing systems ever, and I'm sure it does a gazillion different things, but I just wanted to clarify in my language what it was that what you had just talked about.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess if I spoke to the price optimization side of it, we work with a lot of global enterprises on helping them to centralize their pricing platform, right? So they have a source of pricing governance, and that's helping in the execution of those prices across all the channels, all the regions, maintaining some coordination of that pricing to, limit arbitrage, limit, the concerns of channel conflict, but also harmonize pricing across those channels, and then also optimize that pricing based on science, right? So we have algorithms, proprietary algorithms. We've got, I think it's about 30 data scientists, decades of experience, where we've got the latest generations of algorithms on predicting the willingness to pay of a buyer in their unique situation.
Yep, absolutely. Sounds fascinating. So now what we're going to do is we're going to jump into what you're passionate about. You actually sounded passionate about all that too. But now let's talk about what you're passionate about, which is personalization and digital selling.
Mm-hmm.
Now, are these the same thing or are they different? Define the two terms for me, would you please?
Yes, absolutely. So when it comes to personalization, right, I think what we always hear is that, customers really want their buyers to understand them, really want to understand their needs at a personalized level. And I think that pricing gives us a unique way to do that, to better understand, well, do they really value this? Because if they're not willing to pay for it, it's a clear sign that, maybe it's not something they're so valuing so much. And then when it comes to digital selling, I think there is a relationship to personalization there too, because a lot of us, it's easier for us to purchase in a self-serve way. So what are the ways in which businesses are tuning into their customers and making it easier to purchase by understanding them so well that they don't even have to be present. They don't have to have a sales rep holding their hand through a purchase process.
Yeah, so when I read you sent me a white paper, and if I'm allowed to, I'll link that white paper to the show notes.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So it was a really interesting white paper. I enjoyed it a lot, but as I read through it and I was trying to figure out how would I have defined those two terms, I was thinking personalization sounded a lot to me like dynamic pricing.
It is, yes.
Okay.
A dynamic understanding of what that customer values, I think. And then just because it's so related to the offer as well, and the sort of, the dynamics of, if a customer has a large footprint with your business, they may be a strategic partner, they may drive a lot of volume, that drives a different approach on pricing.
Yeah. And then the digital selling part, I define it easily as sales without salespeople, right? but in truth, what you guys are really doing is using tons of AI, tons of data that you've gathered, and you're trying to piece together a buyer's journey for different buyers and treat different buyers differently. Now, did those words make sense to you, or was that not right?
Well, on the buyer's journey perspective, I think that what makes sense to me about that is that, yes, like if a customer or a buyer perhaps is a new buyer to you, that would probably be an attribute that's driving a certain willingness to pay, right? Like they may not yet trust your business to supply the quality services that they're expecting or the quality products that they're expecting. I think on that buyer's journey, what we had really explored with Hanover Research through the white paper was, we went out and we did, I think it was about maybe 15 interviews with purchasing professionals to better understand, when it came to the vendors that they really trusted, what were the attributes of those vendors, what had they done, and what was forcing purchasing professionals to make a decision to switch to an alternate vendor. They don't often want to do that. They enjoy working with suppliers that they trust. They want the status quo, I guess, if you can say that, right? Because they want to maintain some consistency. And so one of the things that I thought was so interesting was that the purchasing professionals that seemed really sophisticated would say that, they want pricing to be a non-issue. They want there to be so much established trust, actually, that buyer or that supplier is going to give them a market relevant price, that they don't have to spend the time negotiating.
Yeah. And so let's talk about digital selling then. What are some of the things that you guys do? I assume Pros helps with this, or we wouldn't be talking about it. So what are some of the things that you guys do to help in the world of digital selling?
Yeah, to what you said, leveraging AI, we're helping to personalize those offers, but also help from a dynamic pricing perspective. One of the things that we spoke about within that white paper was the fact that what we're seeing is those businesses that are getting a majority of their sales through digital channels. We kind of equated that to, if you're able to sell a lot through digital channels, you're successful with those digital channels. Is that now a lot of businesses are investing in a pricing infrastructure level, right? They're putting money not only towards the pricing teams, but towards technology as well. And one of the things additionally that we've seen is that kind of the typical approach to uploading a static process or a static price list for your e-commerce channel just isn't enough to maintain the competitive pricing that you need. We've seen, some companies will go and they'll update that pricing on an hourly basis, through updated price lists on that frequency. But the most sophisticated companies now are calculating that pricing in real time. And that does take, significant processing and performance power and scalability and availability as well. You don't want, if you're going to rely on a calculation engine to supply, pricing directly to e-commerce. You can just imagine if I'm looking at a full catalog, maybe there's 30 products on the page that I'm looking at, and I want personalized pricing for that because, I'm a longtime customer of yours and I expect, maybe my contracted price, but again, those products that I haven't purchased before, I believe I deserve some incentive on those products. We've got to calculate that in real time for the competitive conditions. And the sophisticated companies now are moving towards doing that real-time calculation. We've got a solution called Real-Time Pricing Engine that is enabling that. And we're seeing a lot of success with our customers in their ability to move, what were traditional direct sales to digital channels with that.
So I think I might have a misunderstanding. So let me make sure that I'm on the same page as you.
Mm-hmm.
When I read and thought of digital selling, I was thinking more on the marketing side and helping the buyer's journey and moving people through the process. And what I've heard you say over and over again is pricing in the digital selling world.
Yes.
Was that more accurate, pricing in the digital selling world?
Well, that's a lot of the focus that, yes, Pros provides is like we can help to optimize prices through helping pricing across both the e-commerce, maybe a partner portal engagement, or also even just like making that price retrieval faster and getting, a sense of what the right market relevant price is for salespeople quickly can offer a lot of value to a business as well.
So I have to confess, this just became more interesting to me. If we're going to talk about pricing in the digital selling world. Let's jump. I want to jump to a B2C example for a second, only because all of our listeners would understand this, and it's probably not a company that you're doing business with.
Okay.
But let's talk about Amazon.
Yes.
So Amazon has got some wild pricing engines back behind trying to figure out what price they're going to charge different people at different points in time. And so I could imagine a time where I logged on and I looked at a price for something, and then I logged on in a private browser on a different IP network and using a VPN, and I get a very different price.
Mm-hmm.
Does that cause a problem in the B2B world?
So I think, what we're seeing and what we saw in that white paper was that it needs to be explainable and trustworthy, right? I mean, because you said there was some time lapse, right, between when you logged on to one computer versus the next, maybe I know Amazon's prices change for me quite a lot sometimes, right? Like maybe a matter of a few dollars, a few cents, but I may have looked at something a couple days ago and I come back to it. They let me know an item that I put in my cart or that I had on my list has changed price. So I think buyers are seemingly better understanding, perhaps because of the Amazon effect, that pricing is going to be dynamic. And in fact, what we saw was that actually 2/3 of buyers would actually prefer a vendor that was pricing dynamically because they viewed that as perhaps, that might be an opportunity for them to get cost savings in some cases as well. Maybe when, demand for a product had declined, that company would more quickly update pricing. And so I think just the alignment to being trustworthy, I think, is what's most important there. If it's, we never want to get to a place of price gouging, right? But if it makes sense, if it's explainable, then I think then buyers are willing to work with dynamic pricing in that way.
So that sounds so nice, but pricing is so often not explainable.
Okay.
Right. So you have two salespeople going out to negotiate prices, and one doesn't negotiate and the other does negotiate. Right?
Yes.
And that's not explainable. That's just two different companies get two different prices based on how salespeople behave. I
hear what you're saying on that. Absolutely. And so that is actually one of the things that we support our customers in from a price optimization standpoint. One of our customers, he's been running pricing at a med device manufacturer that we work with. And he is so proud of the fact that his team has actually reduced the variation in the prices of some capital medical equipment that they sell. And it's great, right? Because now they have, that's part of their brand now, is that, they have an established price point. They're actually on the higher end of the price point, but that's because they've been able to communicate the unique value of their products in such a way that buyers and even like the market indices for that specific product line show that this particular manufacturer doesn't often discount, and they do a lot actually when it comes to pricing to consider perhaps the non-dollar negotiations. They'll do stuff with their services to move that offer to a place that works for their clients.
Yeah, it's actually interesting because I'm really torn on this topic when I think about it.
Mm-hmm.
I play in the speakers world a lot. And in the speakers world, they have this phrase called fee integrity, which means you don't negotiate your fee, right? Whatever your fee is, that's what your fee is. And then I live in the world of pricing, where we talk about price segmentation or dynamic pricing, or we're going to change prices based on the condition or customer's willingness to pay. Mm-hmm. And those feel like the two opposite ends of the spectrum. And I can't say which one is right or wrong on any general way. But I could say, look, there are circumstances where it makes a ton of sense to say, no, we don't negotiate fees, or we don't negotiate prices. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, there's tons of situations where I want to charge what my customer is willing to pay, and that's price segmentation.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of view it as, the negotiation is your opportunity to better understand what the customer values, right? And so I'm not familiar with the way speakers' fees are structured. I would imagine that they were, maybe tailored to audience sizes or length or travel and things like that. So
don't imagine that.
No. Well, see, I would consider segmentation would be a way to support that. I think, that's definitely a challenge, right? So you're coming back to your question, you're saying, you want to have fee integrity.
Well, let me go straight to the medical device company and ask you, if I can reduce all variability in my pricing, mm-hmm. doesn't that by definition say I didn't do price segmentation?
That's an interesting question. Well, price variation, I think what we're trying to look at there is an explainable price variation, right? And that may include things like, what are my shipping costs, or where am I servicing from, type of thing. So, and that's an interesting point, but I think what we're so concerned with is where the price variation is for something less explainable, maybe like, the sales reps, perhaps less than comprehensive perspective on the market.
Yep. Yeah. So I tend to like, when I'm doing B2B work, mm-hmm. and we have a direct sales force, I like the price variation because what it does is it gives me the ability to try to figure out what customers value and don't value. Absolutely. Right. And I'm sure you guys do this too. You take the price paid as the dependent variable, mm-hmm. in a statistical analysis, and then we figure out, so why did those people pay more? We like that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes. So what we offer in one of our flagship solutions, it's called Pros Guidance, is we provide a window of pricing, sort of a price envelope, I guess is what we call it, from the floor to the expert price. And so that allows for the salesperson to have that negotiation, but they're better equipped with this guidance for that unique situation.
Yeah. Oh man, Valerie, I'm having a great time with this conversation, but we're going to have to wrap it up. What's one piece of pricing advice that you would give our listeners that you think could have a big impact on their business?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, pricing, the process of pricing, the strategy of pricing is a constant evolution. I think, unfortunately, we are in the midst of the COVID-19, crisis today. And what we're seeing is businesses have to accelerate the shift to digital selling. And so, we're constantly evolving. The market is constantly changing. Sometimes we're going to have to change faster than, I guess, standard times. But, when it comes to pricing, we've got to constantly invest in that. I think what I see is that, there's no end goal there. It's a constant journey of evolution to continually aligning your pricing to what customers value and better understanding what they value.
Nice. So pricing is absolutely a process and an evolution. right? It's not static.
Mhm.
Excellent. So Valerie, thank you so much for your time today. If anybody wants to contact you, how can they do that?
Yeah, reach out to me. My email address is vhoward@pros.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn as well, Valerie Howard on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Episode 66, all done. Let's see, what was my favorite part of today's podcast? I think I struggle with that fee integrity versus price variance issue or price segmentation issue a lot. So just thinking about it a little more is always interesting. What was your favorite part? Please let us know in the comments of wherever you downloaded and listened. While you're at it, would you please give us a 5-star review? We take these very seriously. And by the way, they're hugely helpful to us. Don't forget, we have a free community where you can access all of my publications. It's at community.championsofvalue.com. If you have any questions or comments about the podcast or about pricing in general, feel free to email me, mark@impactpricing.com. Now, go make an impact.